guys.
A shit show, a pure shit show. It literally takes a village. Like,
I don't know if it was dirty or clean.
oh my god.
Bad mom. Like
Gone
that movie.
wild.
Yes.
Because I'm shining.
Woo! That was good, guys. What was one of the crappiest nights of sleep that you've ever had as a mom?
Ooh.
Marianne, I pick you first.
You pick Marianne.
Okay. I feel like all my nights with Landon were
The whole first 2 years.
I don't know. Landon was like one
Poor
that
Landon.
woke up
Poor
every
Landon.
2 hours. But see, he was my first child.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about this later. Like, so I always woke up and tended to him right away and made sure he fell back asleep. And it would take like an hour just to put him back. So, and it was just his first 2 years.
So my crappiest night of sleep would probably be, it was with Devin. He was a new baby. So like, I want to say like he was a few weeks old. And I remember like him sleeping no one told me like, you may want to wake this baby up because he's sleeping all through the day and he's going to be up all through the night. I was a new mom. I had no idea. I'm like, he's just a newborn. They're supposed to sleep. So I let him sleep like the majority of the day, and he woke up almost towards the night, and I kept him up for a little bit. And then when it was time to go back to sleep, he went back to sleep. But then he woke up in the middle of the night, and I remember trying to get him back to sleep, and he was just up like, what are we about to do, Mom? Are we going to watch TV? What are we going to do? And I'm trying to get him to sleep, and like nothing's working. And I don't know, I don't even remember if like Tyler was there at that time, or because I don't remember him helping with that. So who knows what that was. But I was trying to get him back to sleep, He would not go back to sleep. Next thing I know, I'm starting to hear birds, and then I look out, the sun's coming up, and I am just like rocking him in a mess. And at this time, I was still staying with my parents. That's probably why Tyler wasn't there. I was still staying with my parents, and I remember my mom walking in, and she was like, oh my God, like I looked a mess. Like my eyes were bloodshot red. I had been crying, but I didn't want to wake anyone up because I didn't want them to think that I couldn't do it. So she came in and she was like, oh my God, have you been up all night? And I'm like, yes. And I just start breaking down in tears, and I'm like, he has been up all night. So then I remember she got him for me, and she was like, well, go back to sleep. I'll take him. Like, you look a mess pretty much. So she took him for me, and I went to sleep. But that's when I learned very quickly that I need to help this child get his days and nights together, because he was all mixed up. That was the worst. Yeah, that was a really bad night. Really bad night.
I feel like the hospital visit, like right when you have them in the hospital, those are like the worst nights, because not only is your baby up all night, but they keep coming in to check you, and they keep coming in to prick you or give you something. And like those are the worst. But for me, my worst night that I could think of all 3 kids is when they're sick. Like I not too long ago, I think it was last year, the baby, she was one, and for some reason she was fussy, and I put her down to sleep. And we've done like there's certain times where we'll do like the gentle crying it out kind of thing, because sometimes I just feel like she knows that we're out there, so she'll just kind of like want us to come and get her. And so I'm like, no, you need to go to sleep. So she was just sitting up in her bed, and she was just kind of playing by herself. I think she was two. And then all of a sudden, like I see her kind of, I don't know if I told this story on the podcast or I just told you guys before. Like she kind of like, I saw her kind of shaking, and then I went in the room, and she had vomited all over herself, and then she would have diarrhea, and just that night was like the longest night ever, because I just remember every time I would lay her down, she would sit back up and vomit, and then she would have crap, and it was awful. I don't know why I didn't rush her to the hospital or anything. I think because my husband was there, and he was like, I just keep giving her fluids, and they're just going to send you home later, and so I don't know. But Yeah, that was a long night. I hate when they're sick. Those are the worst.
And
You just know you're not going to get any sleep at all when they're sick. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so moving into this Tired as a Mother episode, did you guys have troubles with any of your kids sleeping through the night? It sounds like Marianne had a full year.
Years.
Tell us.
Well, like I said, Lennon's my first. So as a first-time mom, I'm just like, oh my God, whatever you need, child, I am there. So he was one I breastfed. So I would breastfeed him to sleep until he'd knock out. Like I never just like stopped breastfeeding him and then put him down. Like I was the type that let him fall asleep on me. Mm-hmm. So he would wake up every 2 hours on the dot. And I swear, like every time I go in there, I'd pick him up and breastfeed him. And it'd take like half an hour to put him back down. So then like the next 2 hours rolled around, he'd wake up and it would be the same thing over and over and over. But yeah, I feel like it was even worse on like when he would go through the sleep regressions, or like if he was sick or teething, like those nights were every 1 hour.
Yeah, so, those nights are awful.
Yeah. So I feel like with him it was harder, but with Levi, I think it's when he sleeps with me in the bed are the nights that he can't sleep. Like he sleeps great in his crib, or now he's in the bed. But if like, say we went out of town or we're on a camping trip and he's in the bed with me, like he can't sleep. And neither can I.
Out of my bed.
Yeah. Like he'll move a lot and like he'll feel me and he'll start crying, or like he's kicking me and I
need
can't
you to
sleep.
Get out.
Yeah. So those are like, for Levi, those are the nights that he's not sleeping, other than teething. But yeah, he's pretty good about sleeping. But see, now with Levi, I don't like tend to him like I did with Lennon. Like if he cries, like I don't rush in there and make sure I get him back to sleep. Like I let him cry for a little bit, and then if he doesn't stop, then that's when I go in. Versus with Lennon, I would run in right away.
Like any little peep, he would run in.
Yeah.
When did Landon get better? Like when did he actually start sleeping?
Probably at like 2.5, 3.
What? Really?
No, that was Jack Jordan too. That was my first too.
Because I breastfed him for 16 months. So that's a 1.5-ish. And then I don't know.
I know, because you always hear so many good things about breastfeeding, and I always gave myself so much guilt thinking like maybe he wouldn't be doing this if I was breastfeeding still, or maybe he'd be sleeping through the night if I was breastfeeding, or and it's just like you just don't know. Yeah. Everyone has the similar struggles. Yeah.
Wow. For me, I think I feel like all of my kids had their own little sleeping problems. Like with Devin, it continued on. He would have a hard time sleeping, and I didn't know about any like sleep training things at the time. And I remember we would have to literally take him for rides to fall asleep. Like it was the most annoying thing. It would be late at night. We would have to load him up in the car, take him for a drive, and hope that when we got him out, he stayed asleep. And I don't know why we did that. It was such an inconvenience, but we did it often. And then Peyton, he wasn't so bad with having the problem sleeping, but as I mentioned before, he was hospitalized when he was a baby, so I feel like that threw off everything. And then naturally we just started, when he would have a problem sleeping, I don't know why I always revert back to this, driving the kids so they got tired, but we found ourselves doing that a little bit for Peyton too.
Dang, so you guys were spending money on gas.
Driving around. We wouldn't drive far, but the whole point of getting in the car was just way too much. So by the time Harley came along, I was like, we knew better by this time. And so I started trying to find things that would help. Like then I looked into the sleep training, and I went through 2 different sleep training. The first one, I don't remember the name, but I know Janelle's gonna make me remember it so we could link it.
Yep.
but but
only the ones that work, not the ones that don't work.
Okay, so then the first one I don't have to worry about. But the first one, it was more of like a real like cutthroat, like cry it out situation, and I just wasn't strong enough at the time to endure that kind of crying it out. And then you guys always hear me talk about little Miss Harley. She early as a baby, she would cry until she threw up. Like it wasn't no, okay, I'm gonna stop crying. It was like, I'm gonna cry till I throw up, because then they'll come in here and they'll get me up. Like that was the kind of kid she was. So that one did not work at all.
That's my middle one. That's Max.
Really? Oh my God. And that's so funny because it goes on to their like personality. It's like strong. Wow, that's crazy. But the other one, I think it was Baby Wise, or I don't remember the name. But that one was almost the same method, but I feel like it had like soothing mechanisms in there for them to like find. It would let me like stay by the crib if I needed to rub her back or calm her down. It allowed me to do that. The other one said just put him in the bed, close the door, and walk out. So this one helped. By the 3rd day, she was already sleeping through the night.
Okay, later on in this episode, I want you to go into more detail of exactly how you did that, because that sounds like a miracle. 3 days? Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to remember.
Really
yeah, I'm gonna have to really think about those steps.
Now, when you would take them out of the car, the first 2, when you would drive them around and take them out of the car, would they wake up once you stop the car, or would they still be out? Like, because you still have to get them out of the car seat.
Yeah, and it was like it was like trying to lay down a bomb. I think there was like I do remember vaguely, like there was like 2 times where Devin like woke up and was like alert, and I remember Tyler like driving him again. He went to sleep. Yeah, it was bad. I can't believe we did that. First time parents just.
You guys, were click and connects not a thing then? Like the click and connect.
Not with Devin. I don't think so.
No, he was older too. But even
that was 13 years ago, 14 years ago.
But yeah, and even then, no, I don't even think we had those. And if we did, by the time he was doing that, I don't even think he would fit in one of those, because after a certain time, right, they don't fit in that little one anymore.
Oh, so we're talking like he was not a newborn. Like he was how old? Like 7 months?
Oh, he was like 9 months. Like I remember still driving him around at 9 months doing that.
Oh my gosh. Well, like
he was into Thomas the Train. So how old are you at Thomas the Train? He was older and old enough to be.
Wow. Because we would drive Levi a couple times, but ours is a click and connect. So we would just click them out and keep them in there, but I would tilt it a little, so that he's kind of like laying.
No, we've done that a couple times where you're just like, hey, just leave the child sleeping in there.
Yep.
And we did that too, where you lean it up. Yeah. There's been times where we've had to bring in the swing in our room just to let the kid, because our first 2, they were so used to the swing, and there were nights where either they were teething or going through a growth spurt or something, and there was just nothing to soothe, like we were not able to soothe them, so we would put them in the swing, and we would just to get a little bit of sleep.
Some kind of sleep.
Yeah.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay, so 2 out of the 3 kids that I have were awful sleepers, my first 2, and they are boys. But I don't think it's like a boy girl thing, like, oh, girls are better sleepers. I think I think we just finally learned a different method for the 3rd one. But for the first 2, we tried co-sleeping, not so much at night, but like during naps, we would co-sleep. And those kids would not go to bed unless I laid down with them, which was awful. I never would suggest that.
Recommend it at all.
Yeah. We also did the crying out. So with my first one, okay, my parents were no help when it came to like the sleeping situation, because they were always like, oh, you guys were such great sleepers, you guys just slept. And I'm like, okay, so all my
Well,
kids are
thanks.
awful then? Like, how do give me some help? And so then they would tell me to like let him cry. But then we always lived with somebody. Like we lived with his parents, we lived with my parents, and we can just let the kid cry out, you know, forever. And my dad had to go to work, his mom, and there was no way his mom was going to sit there letting us let this kid cry. She would come in and get him, you know, and save him. So there were times though we did try the whole crying it out, and yeah, my middle one, he was so stubborn. He would just cry for, I remember it went over an hour and I was like, I don't think this is working. I don't think this, like, I got to go in there and save him. And I eventually went in there and he was just drenched and mad and like, you know how they do that whole little
like
cry thing. And I
shaking.
felt so shitty. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I just heard people say, just let them cry. So I'm like, okay, I'll let him cry. And some kids definitely have like a stronger will than others, and they show it real early. And even my first kid, my parents had a trailer, and so my first kid, he was already 2.5, and he was not sleeping through the night. And so one of our friends had told us, oh, you just have to, like, one night, you just have to let him cry. He's already old enough to know, like, as long as he knows that you guys are going to come and save him. And if he gets it, like, one night, you guys are not going to come and save him, he will, like, finally get it and he won't do it anymore. So, because now it's like he's older, and they felt like it was like more of a manipulation kind of thing. Like the kid's like, he doesn't need anything, he just wants us, you know. And so then we slept in the trailer just so that we can let him cry it out. Like we set him up in a little playpen and we slept right by him. And I remember, because at that age he's already old enough to say mama, you know, and so he's staring at us like we're right there next to him, but we were just like, pretend to be sleeping. don't move. And we're just like, this is awful. And he's just like, mama. And then finally, like, it took like a good 30 minutes, but I think because he like finally realized that we weren't going to roll over, then he just like nestled down and laid down. And it was true though. Like that one time we had to do it.
Really?
And then
Just one?
But I think because he was older, because he was already 2.5, you know, by that age, like I think they get things a little bit faster. But yeah, but we did some of the car rides things, or we would even put them in the car seat and kind of just like rock them and like cover them with a blanket and then just kind of shift them. Like these kids always needed constant movement. or like a rocking or like a butt pat, you know, we would have to just constantly move. But I think that was our fault. Like now that I learned different methods, I realized like I was the one that thought, oh, you just keep rocking the baby, you know, like you keep moving and they're fine. Like, and you don't have to freaking do that. So,
but I think it's a habit too. You notice whenever you hold a baby or something, automatically I start some kind of rocking or like,
yeah. But if you think about it, like at night when you're sleeping in bed and you're pregnant with them, like they're used to you laying still, you know, you're not fucking walking in the middle of the night, you know.
But
But they're in
water. Yeah, it's like motion. They're moving, so they're always constantly.
But now when you're like, okay, think about it. Okay, don't laugh, Marianne. Yes, I get it. They're floating in this water, but I'm saying like, obviously if you're walking, it's going to cause more movement, you know, and if you're staying still, it's not. I mean, yeah, when they move, it'll move, but they're not just constantly, it's not like a riptide in there.
But when you're pregnant, do you notice that they don't move when you're moving around and you feel them kicking more when you're just laying down? They're awake because you're not moving.
But not all the time. Like with my youngest one, she didn't move a lot at night. It's
like when you would lay in bed, you never just like let her kick and you wouldn't.
Well, yeah, I can't not let her kick if she wants to kick. But I'm saying like some of the babies I notice, some move more than others at night, you know, and some move more than others during the day. Like Ray moved more, my youngest moved more during the day than she did at night. If that makes sense. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so Marianne, what kind of things did you try and failed?
Oh, everything.
You're just a
Like,
failure.
with Landon, we swaddled him, and that worked for X amount of time. Like, he's naturally one that moves a lot. Like, even when he's awake, he's constantly moving. So when he's sleeping, he's like moves. He's upside down when he in the morning. He's like a mover. So at a certain point, he was like always kicking, and he kicked himself out of the swaddle. So then it was just like he was just tangled in it at one point. So then I remember it was so bad with him that I would have to sleep on the floor sometimes, like, because our rooms are like you have to walk through the hallway kind of thing. And I was so tired of walking to his room every hour or 2 hours that at some point I would just like sleep on his floor sometimes. And I remember like when we took the swaddle off, I would still kind of put like a small baby blanket on him, just like because he needed something. And I remember, yeah, he kicked it, but it went over his face. Oh. And I remember, I don't know how I heard it dead asleep, but I could hear like the muffling of him under the blanket. And I'm like, I got up and I like pulled it off, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So like the swaddle and the blanket was a total fail. And we have like the sound machine where you can choose like the ocean sound, the heartbeat sound, the static sound. I tried that like to help soothe them to sleep, because everyone's like, oh, if you do like the ocean sound, it reminds them of your belly or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I would put that thing on like full blast. That did not work. I think at first it like the first couple seconds he would hear it, and you could tell he like would stop and be like, oh, what's that noise? But then he'd start crying again.
Yeah. And he'd be like, oh, it's just that she's trying to get me again.
Yeah. We did the cry it out with Landon. We did the cry it out, and I couldn't do it.
What's like, the longest that you lasted?
I think minutes. It was probably like 10, 15. And I was just like, no, I can't do it. Like he was like shaking and like gagging. And I was like, no, I'm a horrible person. So then we locked that out the window. And like even just going in to soothe them till they fell asleep, I think like that's what worked. But it's like a bad habit, because then once like Levi came around and we did something different with him, like I was like, oh, that was like bad, like to do with Levi.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what you did with Levi then.
So yeah, and I don't know if it's the methods that we chose because we learned from Landon's like experiments. That's why Levi's a better sleeper, or just naturally like their personalities are like that. So I don't know. I don't know if it's our methods or them individually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's probably a mixture of both.
I've heard like this lady had 4 kids, and at all 4 of them, she used the same method on them, and all 4 of them ended up sleeping through the night. So I'm like, okay, not all 4 of them were natural sleepers, so I feel like some methods do definitely work.
I wonder, was it certain like time that it worked for them? Like, what if the baby was a month when she started and the other baby was like 1?
Yeah, I think the earlier you start, the better. Trust me, I wrote down all the tips, and I'm going to share them with you guys.
I moved both boys into a crib in their own room at like 4 months. Like,
what happened?
Good.
I moved both boys. Like originally when they're born, they're in that like, I don't know what that's called, the rock and play thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Next to my bed in our room. And then exactly at 4 months, I moved both boys at 4 months into the nursery in their crib. So
that's good.
Good. That is really good.
My first 2 my first one slept by us for like a year, I think. He had a crib to go to, but we just had him by the pack and play for like ever, it seemed. The second one, we booted him out to a crib at 4 months. And then the third one, it was 2 weeks. And I I'm telling you, like this thing that I had read, I was like, I have to try this because yeah, so 2 weeks anyway. We put her in the crib at 2 weeks.
We want to know, Janelle. Tell us. Just
I'm
go.
gonna tell you.
What things failed for you? Who's like Roni?
Everything. Obviously, the driving around like fools didn't work. I mean, we took it. I remember taking it so far to I got in the damn crib with the kids at one point.
Shut up.
Like it was that bad. So I was in the
I've
crib.
seen moms do that and take pictures, and I'm like, how are you not scared that it's not gonna break?
No, it doesn't
I don't
break.
know if I just buy cheap ass cribs or what, but I'm just not brave enough to go in there.
It doesn't
Can't
break.
climb that thing.
Getting in there. I got in there for Devin. I got in there for Peyton. I don't think I got in there for Harley because I got with it real quick. But definitely, like we tried so much and nothing worked. I tried. Devin had a little stuffed animal too, and after a while, I feel like when he got a little older, like around like two-ish, maybe close to 3, that became like the way he was able to sleep with the stuffed animal. But
that's another, like the binky, I would give him the binky. I feel like that just caused a bigger problem because they would wake up in the middle of the night and they would like look for it. Yeah. And then a lot of times he would like hit it off the crib. So then it would fall underneath the crib and you got to go freaking in a panic to find it because yeah.
We'll continue on. Tell us about yours.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what worked because I kind of went over what didn't work earlier. Okay, so what worked? It's funny because I praised this book, Baby Wise, but I never even read the damn book. I just got the cliff notes from a mom who made a full-on blog that's called Chronicles of Baby Wise. I'll link it below. But it's basically she goes through, I think she had 6 kids and each one of them she did the Baby Wise for, and she'll break it down by like the month. And if your kid is this age, this is what schedule I had them on for feeding and for naps and everything like that. So I followed her like a freaking stalker. But and then there's the Baby Whisperer and Happiest Baby on the Block. Like those ones I actually read. But they all kind of had very similar techniques, but basically they followed a routine of eat, play, sleep. So when your baby wakes up, you feed the baby so that the baby's like wide awake to get a full feeding and to load up on all the calories. And you want them to load up on as many calories during the day so that they don't have to wake up at night starving. You know, a lot of babies, obviously, especially newborns, are going to wake up still in the middle of the night. But like as they get a little bit older, they're not waking up in the middle of the night because they need a full feeding. It's just because they're catching up on calories that they didn't have during the day. But you try to bulk them up during the day, basically. So when they were newborns, we didn't have them on the schedule because these books say don't have them on a schedule. Just let them see at night. They would say to let them wake up naturally, and then feed them, but don't like just because they made a little or like seem like they're gonna wake up, don't run to their rescue right away. They would say
sound like a baby moan. Sorry, Janelle.
they would say to like wait for like a real cry, like and it's so crazy because that's why I had to move the baby out of my room because they're newborns and they make so many little and then they just fart, or like they make all these little noises and stuff, and it would keep me up because the whole time, because I like to be prepared. So I'm like, okay, she's wiggling. So I'm going to just make her a bottle and I'm going to be ready, so that when she wakes up, and then she would not wake up. And then I just wasted a fucking bottle of breast milk or formula or whatever. A lot. And so I used to do that a lot with the boys. So with her, I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait till she gives me a full on yap, and it really made a difference. I feel like she she would start and she'd kind of get uncomfortable, and then an hour later she would wake up. So that's an extra hour of sleep that I would get. So by putting her in a separate room, they say kind of gets you to sleep through those little and as long as they're safe, they don't have blankets over them covering their head, as long as like you make sure that they're safe, they're fine through those little noises, and then they just put themselves to bed. So they're kind of learning how to self-soothe on their own without having to cry. And then when they actually cry, you can go in and check their diaper to see, okay, maybe it's a wet diaper. And then sometimes these little babies, the newborns, will fall asleep right away after you change their wet diaper, so maybe they don't necessarily need a feeding. Basically, they would say this book is like, don't pop your tit in their mouth every time they make a noise, like let them kind of
figure it out
and at a young age, but then during the day though, try to load them up. And so when you're trying to load them up on calories, they would recommend waking them up every 2.5 to 3 hours, so you're technically kind of on a schedule, waking them up and feeding them, so, and then they try to keep them awake during the day for that feeding. Like, obviously a newborn's not going to be awake all day long because that's just not how they work. They're going to fall asleep, but as long as they're awake to get a full feeding, that's what matters. And then they could take a million naps, and their tips on getting a full feeding was to like unswaddle them during their feeding, so that they kind of startle themselves. And because how that if they're all cooped up and nice and comfy, they're gonna fall asleep, but if they're unwrapped, they're gonna kind of flail and be awake, and then also they said for like naps for newborns, to let them get used to sleeping in different environments. Like one nap you're gonna put them in the crib, and you're not going to swaddle them, so that they don't sleep in a deep sleep so much during the day, and you swaddle them at night because you want them to sleep longer.
Save it.
Yeah,
basically.
So you let them sleep, you let them lay flat in their rocking, like they're those what are they? The cradles, pack and play. You put them in the living room and next to all the noise, so that they hear, like this way the baby's able to sleep in different rooms and noises and lighting situations. One room's dark, one room's light, and they're napping, and you're doing all of that as a newborn. So they're getting used to all of those things. And because newborns don't really need to be rocked as much as they do when they're a little bit older, if you get them used to like falling asleep on their own, which is so weird because I never did. I would hold them and cuddle them and like have them on my neck, because I mean, you're excited, but you don't need to do that all the time to get them to go to sleep, or else they're gonna need that butt pat every day, so these books would recommend to avoid using props like the rocking chairs and the swingings and the pacifiers if they're already calm. And that's one thing I used to do. Like I used to always put them in a vibrating chair or put them in the swing. If I can't hold them, then I'm going to put them in a swing because they need to feel like some type of movement,
You already started those soothing mechanisms before
and I just realized I started my own fucking shit, the fact that they can't go to sleep without me is because I started it
you
at such
set
a
it
young
up that
age.
way.
Yeah, and we don't know. I mean,
no,
I didn't know better.
I think we all do that. Yeah, we all do that.
And then another tip that this book gave was to like around 8 weeks old is when you start putting them like on a sleeping schedule. So you pick a wake up time and you pick a bedtime. Like, okay, so for example, Ray's it just worked out because the boys went to school and stuff. So I made her wake up time 7 a.m. and this is at 8 weeks. So she's only 2 months old. She was waking up at 7 a.m. and she would go to sleep at 7 p.m. But that doesn't mean she slept through the night at 2 months old. It just meant that if she wasn't awake by 7 a.m., I would wake her up and then feed her and get her day going like that early. Even though it was so tempting for me to want to sleep in, I wanted her on that schedule because I wanted her to get used to that routine and then eventually stay on it, And so it's weird because now she still wakes up at 7 and still goes to sleep at 7 p.m. and she's 2 years old, about to be 3. And another myth is like the whole sleeping all day long is obviously it's it's bad if they're sleeping just all day long and then but I didn't realize that they actually do need a lot of naps. Like they said, yeah, because if they don't get enough naps during the day, they're going to be more restless. They're overly tired and overly stimulated at night. And I didn't know that, because if the baby took too many naps, I'm like panicking. And there's like a soft, like what is a soft spot, sweet spot? Like make sure you don't go over a certain amount, because you don't want them to get too overly tired to where they're just like messed up and all off their rocker, So the book had said like newborns to 16 weeks is like around 4 naps per day. 4-month babies take around 3 naps. 10-month-olds take about 2 naps, and then around 18, like 12 months to a year, you can bring it down to 1 nap. But dude, this was legit. Like I didn't realize like my 4-month-old was taking 3 naps, and my other kids, they did not do that. Like it was so weird. And my 10-month-old was taking 2 naps, and I was lucky if my 10-month-old, my boys were taking 1 nap, like if you really follow these like routines and systems in these books, like they really freaking work. And then for bedtime, it said that the baby, so obviously, like newborn, they could sleep by the bedside for the first month. And then after that, you put them in the crib so that not only do they get to be used to their crib and their environment, but you get some good sleep too, and have the consistent bedtime routine. So our routine was to dim the lights. And we would do this for naps too, like dim the lights. And then I would swaddle her. And the swaddle works because if you don't swaddle at such a young age, they have that startle reflex where they'll wake themselves up because their arms flail through the air, so we would swaddle her, and yeah, she was like a little ninja. She would still get out and stuff, but there's some swaddles that are like legit. They like legit stray jackets.
Well, they have them now that you can buy that already has the Velcro and everything, and like keep them tight.
And those are the ones that work the best because they keep them sleeping the longest, so yeah, and then another thing was that they would say put the baby in the crib while the baby's still awake. So what I would do was I would sing her a little song. I'd get the room dark. I'd sing her a song, and when I'm singing her a song, I would sway her and just sing "You're My Sunshine." And then she's awake still, and she's kind of getting drowsy. And then I would lay her down while she's still awake. And then I would say goodnight and give her a kiss and then walk away. And I don't look back. I don't keep saying goodnight. I don't, keep checking on her. I have the baby monitor, and I would just use that, and I would just watch her, and she would be laying there awake. And then eventually she would fall asleep on her own without crying. And I noticed that in the early months, it was easier, like, because she was used to me putting her down as a newborn, that she didn't panic. It was when she got a little bit older that she would have a harder time, and then I would have to do the crying out. But it was different than the
What age was that?
The crying out was, let me see, I think it was like around 4 to 5 months. Around 4 to 5 months. And then another like a huge thing that I didn't know was, how like you put him down. So I would put her down at 7 p.m. and that was her bedtime routine, right? And then any feeding after that is considered like a nighttime feeding, right? And they would recommend to do something called a dream feed, which is, we don't go to sleep at 7 p.m. That's when we do something else, right? We put the baby down, the newborn down, and then we go do something else. Well, they say like when you're about to actually get your butt in bed, which is usually like 2-3 hours after you put the baby down, you go and you give her a dream feed, or give the baby a dream feed, which is you go in and you don't speak to the baby. You keep the lights dark. You only use, a night light, and you like, they literally say like no eye contact. Yeah, no, you just pick them up and you start your feeder. You start feeding a couple ounces or whatever.
Even
and then
while they're sleeping.
while they're sleeping. So they're loading up on the calories to hopefully.
Like she never woke up once you picked
No,
her
no,
up?
no, no. She would wake up a little bit to sleep, but you're not talking to her. So it's not like playtime. This is just like, hey, you're eating. This is quiet. You're just loading up on your calories. And then I would like unwrap her diaper, obviously check her diaper halfway through the feeding and then feed her the rest of the bottle. And then I'd make sure to burp her. And then I would just put her back down. But when I changed her diaper, it's very important to add extra diaper rash ointment, because the longer that they do sleep overnight, that means they're probably going to sleep in a shit diaper, and you don't want them to wake up in a diaper rash. I don't know. I mean, it's very common when my kids, they would sleep late and then I would wake up and they had a poop diaper, because these kids, all they do is poop, So but that whole like layering their butthole, their butt,
whoa,
layering their butt with diaper rash cream helped so much prevent diaper rashes, especially like during this whole nighttime stuff. So then anyway, you burp them, you put them back to the bed, and then you let them sleep until they naturally wake up. And I never used to do that with my first two. Like, I thought, oh, they're newborns, you're supposed to wake them up every 3 to 4 hours. But no, like these books said that you can just let these newborns sleep until they want to wake up and eat. You don't have to keep them unless they're preemie or unless they have health issues. And that's a different story. If your doctor tells you something different, then they need to load up on those calories. Don't listen to me and do what the doctor says. Or not, and it's not like you're listening to me. This is a book telling me, okay? So these are not my words, but this is just what helped. And then they said, this is another tip, okay? The other tip is when they start sleeping 7 to 8 hours straight through the night, to put them in a bigger diaper, because this way they'll sleep longer. And it's basically so that they don't overflow with pee, or because sometimes, like, have you ever woken up and the baby had like drenched themselves? It's basically so that doesn't happen, because the longer that they do sleep, the more that their little bodies are going to pee or poop on themselves. And so so that's what we used to do. And then you drop that dream feed around 4 to 7 months, or when your baby starts sleeping, from the dream feed all the way to the morning. That's when you know that they're ready. But we used to also use a car seat cover, because when we were out of town, like, out and about, our babies were used to, or not our babies, my last one, she was used to sleeping in her crib. But because we kind of put her in different areas and different locations, we always took one of those diaper covers. We'll link one. Those diaper covers that I'm not diaper covers. What are they called? Car seat covers. Yeah, to kind of make it dark. And so then she would just sit in her stroller with a diaper, I don't know why I keep wanting to call it diaper cover, car seat cover. And she would sleep. It was like, dude, honestly, if I had these damn books, I would have had so many more kids.
Right? Wouldn't it be so much easier?
It would have been so much easier.
So when did it come, like, when did you start to use the monitor, because I know you use the white noise thing. When did that come to play? Were you doing this program also when you incorporated that in her sleeping?
Yeah. So the white noise machine that I used was more to keep her from waking up, because I had other kids in the house. It wasn't so much to help her to go to sleep. It was more to keep her from startling, because one of my other younger kids dropped the broom, or you know what I mean? So I would always just keep it like at a medium level, so that she was always hearing some type of noise. So this way she was able to sleep kind of in every situation. But I want to say that was like 4 months, maybe. Yeah.
Does she still use it?
Dude, she still uses it, and I plan to keep using it. Actually, what replaced it recently was the fan, like during the summer, because it's so hot, and I put the fan, and the fan's kind of loud. And so that I haven't had to use the white noise machine during the summer, because she's using the fan. But these techniques work except when they're teething, when they have a cold, when they're going through a growth spurt, or when you're on vacation and you're sleeping with them. You know, like that's when you have to be very patient with them, because when they're cold, when they have a cold, they just want you. You know, when they're teething and they have a growth spurt or whatever, you can't let them cry it out. It's just awful. You're going to feel bad. And those usually last like 5 to 6 days. And as far as the growth spurts, there's an app. I have to find it and I have to link it. There's an app that will tell you when, like, what growth spurt is coming up. And it'll tell you your kid's probably like not going to sleep this week. And it was weird because I never really followed the app, but I would always look back to the app and reference the app to see, okay, she's in this week, you know, her birthday, like she's like 32 weeks old right now. And then it would say like, yeah, she's growing through this growth spurt right now. And basically she's probably not sleeping through the night for the next 7 days. And then it would be like on point. And then I feel like it would make me a little bit more patient with her, because I'm like, okay, and she's not trying to manipulate us or trying, you know, now that she's crawling, she's not trying to get out of the crib. It's just because she's going through this little spurt and I have to be patient. And then we got to, you know, and then I'll show her more love. Is that awful? But it basically says to like be flexible during those times, especially teething. Those are the worst. Like be flexible, that your baby will get back on track. If you get like after that phase is done, if you get back on track, your baby will get back on track. So don't just throw it out the window and think, oh, this didn't work, you know? But yeah, so the crying out with her, it was different from the boys because, I feel like I was a little bit more responsible when I did it. Since I had like a guide, I knew that I didn't know about the teething and all these other rules, like not to let them cry it out if they're teething or if they're going through some type of growth spurt or anything like that. And now that I had this knowledge from these books, I knew, okay, I'm not going to let her cry it out. So it basically was saying like, make sure that they're not sick or anything like that. And then, if they are crying, if they do start crying, let them like give them 10 minutes and give them 10 minutes to like figure it out. And if they don't stop crying, then they would have you go in the room, check their diaper, and then most of the time they would have a shit diaper, and then you feel bad, and then you end up having to change their diaper. And then they go back to like they'll go to sleep. Or if they don't go to sleep after those 10 minutes, to wait a little bit longer. And then it said, obviously, like after an hour, if the kid was crying, this is like for the first time that you're actually trying to cry it out. Like you checked on them after 10 minutes, you didn't shush them or anything. You just checked their diaper and they're fine. Then you leave again. And then after an hour of them crying, then you go back in there, and then you can use a sleep prop because you want them to still get their nap. So like you'll put them in a swing, or you'll put them in, you know, on your chest, and you'll let them sleep because you really, really want them to get that nap. But the next day or the next nap, it'll slowly shrink. Like the amount of time that they cry, you'll notice like it went from an hour to 30 minutes, and then the next time it's 15 minutes, and then it goes by so fast. And because they take so many naps at this point, I think at this point for sleep training is at 4 months, they take a lot of naps still, so they're still learning, so they catch on really quick. So that's what I did, and I'm telling you, it worked. And I just told you everything I did. So there. Now, tell me what you guys did.
We told you.
No, what worked?
Summed it up.
Marianne had like a secret sauce that worked, she said.
I do not.
You said with Landon.
Okay, so
I mean, not Landon, Levi.
The biggest difference I noticed between Landon and Levi was with Landon, we didn't have a routine. Like that kid would just go to sleep whenever he'd go to sleep. He'd have a nap at freaking 7 p.m. and wake up at 9, and then he'd be up, and then his actual bedtime's at like midnight. Like his routine was, and we were all over the place when he was first born. Like I would travel to Fresno, or I don't know. It just, we never had a set schedule for Lennon versus Levi, who's on a schedule on the dot and have a like bedtime routine, and it works. So what I would suggest is routine, 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 because that's all these kids need, and they thrive on routine. Like for Levi, it's always like a bath, a book, well, bath, pajamas, book, and lights out, basically. But like with Landon, we didn't do any of that. And Levi's like good about it. Like he just goes to sleep. And it's funny, it was like always at the same time, you would notice he would start getting tired at that time. Even if like we were out of town, as soon as 7 o'clock hit, like you can see he's tired. And that's the time we would put him to bed at home. So I think for Levi, that's what worked. Keeping the room dark, and like, so the noise machine didn't work for us, but we always have a fan on. So with both boys,
kind of thing.
it's the fan for them. And in order to keep the room, because our rooms are fairly small, so a small fan, the light is like bright in their small room. So like I would have to put like a little like napkin thingy over their buttons so that the room would stay dark. What else? But then as Landon got older, I noticed he needed a light and he wouldn't wake up as much. So as he got older, I took off the little cover, and that was like his nightlight, and he slept way better. And I think I don't know if it's the same app, but it's the Wonder Weeks, and it's like tell you their leaps. Yes. Is that what you're talking about? So like the kids go through leaps, and it's legit spot on. So like I followed it.
I never heard of that.
So all kids, babies and kids, well, they all go through leaps, and like I don't know how it tracks it, but you put in their birthday or whatever, and it'll say like, this week, Levi's going to go through his 4th leap. So expect him to be cranky, expect him to be needy, and da-da-da. And it's like funny because it's a spot on. Like,
you still use it?
With Levi, yeah. And it's
okay, but not
with
at what age? What is the oldest that they offer?
I think the oldest, let me see. I don't know, like Levi's is still on. And he's 21 months now.
So he's almost 2.
How does that work? Because I thought that kids go through different spurts at different times. Like I know people who would say that their child started teething like super early versus somebody else's child like teethed later. Like how does the app know that your kid is going to go through? It doesn't
tell you when. It kind of gives you a window. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more of a window, like, okay, these next 3 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
so
sense.
like it'll even have a calendar, and it'll like highlight the 3rd week, and it'll be like and it'll have like a thunderstorm, like expect.
Shit. As they scare you like that, I want to see a lightning bolt talking about be careful this week.
So that's I mean, that worked for me. And
I don't know about you. I feel like mine were always late, but it was more or less around it. You know, like I would expect a really shitty week, and I'm like, oh, this wasn't that bad. She did great. But then the next week was like awful, and I'm like, oh, damn it.
It's a week off. Yeah. Mine was always like spot on. Like maybe by a day or 2 it was off, but like that week I was expecting it. So it's helpful in a way that like you're expecting it. So like if they are waking up a lot or they're super needy, like you tend to those needs more versus like on different weeks when you know it's not like something that, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know how to explain the leaps. But
you just feel a little bit more patient for them, like during that time. Yeah.
And then I did something like similar with Levi, like instead of, you know, with Landon, like I always tended to him as soon as he would cry in the middle of the night. Like with Levi, we always just gave him 5 minutes. If he would cry, like I would like check the time as soon as I heard him cry and give him 5 minutes. And if he kept crying past 5, like that's when I'd go in the room. But it most of the time he'd cry for like 2 minutes and go back to sleep.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
If you just let them do it a couple of minutes,
So, and it never like, and I think as he got older, like now that he's almost 2 years old, like it's 10 minutes. So like, and it's never fails. Like if it's not like a shit diaper, he just falls back asleep. And me and my husband are like, what the heck? Like he was crying, like loud screaming for a minute or two, and then he just knocks out. And so like I remember like Landon would cry like that and I'd just go straight to the room. And I think I screwed myself over more that way. And Levi's like is able to put himself to sleep a lot better.
Yeah.
So that was like the biggest difference we did with them. Like I never let Levi cry it out. I would always like give him when he was smaller, I gave him 5 minutes and I would go in there and if he's standing crying, like I'd pat his back or I'd like like shush him to calm down, and I'd lay him down. Like I'd never really like pick him up and like rock him and whatever. Like I'd try to just calm him down and then lay him down and then I'd leave. And if he cried,
if he jumped back up, even if he popped back up, you would still.
So if he cried again, I would give it another 5 minutes. And then at the other 5 minutes, I'd go back and do the exact same thing. So it's basically supposed to like teach them to self-soothe, but let them know you're still there for them. Like they don't want to, something about like, if you just let them cry it out, supposedly like they feel neglected or like they have these issues, separation. Yeah. So like by constantly going in and like comforting them a little bit and like letting them know that that they're like awake or crying, it makes them think like, she knows I'm crying, she's helping me, but she's not staying. She's not gonna pick me up. So like you go every 5 minutes if they keep doing it. But with Levi, it never was more than twice. Like I think I went in there, would calm him down, put him back down and leave. And if he cried again, I did again. And that was it. Like, I don't know. It's like magic.
That's the same one how it was with me. It said something about that too. Like that you don't, like you come and you keep soothing them when they need it, but you don't pick them up. You let them know like, okay, it's bedtime. This is it. Like, I know you're crying, but sorry.
It's just to let them know you acknowledge them and not just like are leaving
abandoned them.
Yeah, that's the word.
So my two sons must feel that I abandoned them. But because I screwed that up in the beginning.
Well, like, see, like Landon, like, will come in our bed and snuggle with us and loves to sleep in our bed. Levi does not like to snuggle. We cannot sleep with him. Like, he hates sleeping with us. So it's like, which one do you want? Yeah, like, it's sad.
Those cuddles are like, get out of here, mom.
Yeah. But it's bittersweet, but it saves, I feel like it saves everything. It like saves your sanity because you get some sleep, saves your marriage because you get some sex. Like, you know, like there's so many more pros. And all of a sudden you're like, because every time I used to have a kid, I would feel like, okay, I feel like I aged like 30 years, you know, like, okay, this year is like the longest year of my life and I'm never going to get sleep, you know? And then with her, because we got so much sleep early on, I'm like, dude, I feel like we're young, you know? Like, I mean, not, you know, but it just like, felt
not so bad.
Different. Yeah. It was crazy.
So with Harley, I tried the first cry it out thing. That didn't work. I went to the other one. It's almost similar to what Marianne said. Like, I think I like this one and it worked because it allowed me to go back in the room when she was crying and I can soothe her or like let her know it was time to go to bed and then leave out. But I remember I would have to come back a lot of times, like maybe sometimes even like 8 times in that one session. And then like I mentioned, I remember by the second night, it got less. She didn't cry as much. And then by the third night, it was just a little bit. I walked out and she stopped, and that was her first night of sleeping through the night. And then from that point on, it was like she got it. But it did mention that you had to do the whole routine. So she would know, she would already start prepping and getting ready. Like we would do bath, and she would know. I would do a massage. We would listen to music or read a book through the storytelling book where someone reads it for you. And then you could tell she would kind of get like, oh no, she would try to cling on to me because she knew it was about to be time for her to go to bed and I was out. But she got better and better each time, and then it just worked. And then from that point on, like I never really had problems with her sleeping. She was like the only child who would sleep through the night, who would take a nap. She still takes her nap, and she's going to be 4 in December, and she still takes a nap. So it kind of just conditioned me on a nightly routine that she knew was going to happen, and she got it. And then the same with Peyton towards the, I would say close to because Peyton's different. Like towards 1, he kind of like found it himself, and he's been on that same schedule ever since he was a baby. Like everyone knows, like by 6:30 or 7, Peyton's like peeling his eyes to stay awake, but he wakes up at 4:30 in the morning, and that's the same baby schedule that he was on. He's still on it. He just sleeps through the night. So it's weird.
So crazy.
And then Devin would be all awake at night, still the same. He's a night owl. I literally just had to text him because I heard him walking around upstairs and was like, go to bed. Like he's literally still a night owl. So it's funny how some of those characteristics and traits like transfer over even when they're a teenager.
It is. And then that's what like makes me wonder is, some kids, they just have that where they're just awake. But then, like I said, that one mom used that method, and she's like, all 4 of mine were
She's the
on
exception.
This. Yeah.
I know. Which
no,
is
there's like
crazy.
I joined, so they have like mom groups, like they have a Facebook group, and it's Baby Wise Moms or whatever. I'll link it, and you can join it, and you can ask questions like, hey guys, my kid's 12 months and we're having a hard time, or my kid's 17 weeks and we're having a hard time. And then so many moms will be like, oh, we're going through the same thing right now, and it's a growth spurt, or it's this, or it's that. And they're all like, it's a nice support group, but it's also like they're telling it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Like once you get through this little phase. So it's just like a lot of parents swear by it.
Well, see, I wonder like if they say it's going to get better. Like, I mean, it doesn't bother me now because he's old enough to like know what to do when he wakes up at that time, and he knows he better not wake me up at 4:30. But like with Peyton, like he still gets up between 4:30 and 5. And I even asked him like, buddy, you don't want to sleep in a little bit longer? Like he's like, no, I can't. Like I wake up and I'm up. Like, and I'm like,
probably because he goes to bed so early, so he got all his hours. Like that's a good. I mean, he is sleeping a long time.
Yeah,
and he takes naps during the day.
Take naps. No. He doesn't take naps anymore. And
so
then
what happens?
Devin never was a nap baby ever.
What happens if you try to keep him up a little bit longer? Like say you guys are out and about.
So I noticed when we do keep him up a little bit longer, like he will sleep in a little bit longer, of course. Or like if I tell him, like if he goes to stay over someone's house or something, and I'm like, Peyton, do not wake up at 4:30 or 5. Like if you wake up, just kind of hang there until everyone wakes up, because you can be at someone's house up at 4:30 or 5.
Yeah.
So he knows what to do, but sometimes it'll go like a little bit longer, but he's never been the kid. Like I can't even tell you like a time that Peyton woke up at like 7 or 8. Like if I don't think he's ever like woke up at that time, no matter how late we've kept him up. On New Year's, he went to sleep at like midnight. I think he woke up by 5.
Wow.
I'm like, what?
That was a late morning for him.
Right? But Tyler's the same way. My husband, sorry. They're like, who the hell is that? He's the same way. He's been like that all his life. He wakes up weird hours of the day to start his day. So I'm like, I don't know. Can that come from that's not genetics, right?
I don't know.
I don't know, but
Yo no sé.
I want
But
somebody to
you
let me
make me
sleep
laugh.
till noon.
I know, right? When you said that she would start panicking when she knew like you would start doing the bedtime routine, she would start panicking. That was like Ray when she was 2 and I would say like, okay, it's time for bed. She would no bed, no bed. She would freak out. So I learned I can't say the word bedtime or bed. Like I'm like, okay, let's go potty. And then I mean she knows the routine, so she knows, but if I say the word like
Yep.
you're gonna go to bed, she's just like, no, I'm not tired. 5 more minutes. She still says 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes.
Does she do it for nap too? Because Harley does
Yeah.
it for nap too. When
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, we're gonna have lunch, and she's like, lunch and then nap. Like, you know it.
You know,
So,
you're like, thank the Lord. Yeah.
sometimes she's like,
So
I'm not hungry. Like, I don't care. It's lunch and then it's nap.
and because the routines worked so well, I had no trouble being canceling appointments or like making my schedule around it. Like I
Yeah.
remember people saying like, let's just go to lunch, and that's nap time. I am not gonna break
But
the
I used
nap.
to talk
Like,
about moms. I take it back because I used to be the one like, oh, why moms like make their day around kids nap? I am not gonna do that. Yeah, I totally.
because if they take that nap, you're gonna have a good night's sleep. If they
Yep.
don't, you're screwed for the night. Like every time my kid would like say we ended up going somewhere and she missed her nap or whatever, that night was going to be awful. Like she's not going to sleep good, and I know it, so I'm prepared, but it it sucks.
Like for Landon, it wasn't that he needed to take a nap to sleep all night. It was he needed to take a nap or else he was gonna be like evil that night.
Yeah,
Like
that's
if he didn't
That
take a
night or
nap,
that day?
that
like
day for
that
me.
the rest of the day, like the
Yeah.
late, like early evening, like if he didn't take his 1 or 2 o'clock nap, come 5, 6, he is like not listening, guaranteed timeout. Like it
Yeah.
was hell for all of us. So it was just like it was a forced timeout. I mean, a forced nap. I think he just recently dropped. We just dropped his nap right when school started, but that's because we moved them both into a room together. So now he goes to bed when Levi goes to bed.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's like so much nicer because now me and the hubby are like, oh my God, why didn't we do this a long time ago from like 8 till whenever we have our free time?
Right?
Yeah.
So
Structure
Yep.
gives you more time. Like people
does.
are so afraid of structure, but it's like it actually gives you more
Yeah,
freedom and
it does.
time.
It frees up your time for sure.
And that's
Yeah.
what kids need is structure, or else they're just maniacs.
Mayhem.
Yeah.
Mayhem. Complete
And I
mayhem.
used to think that, especially my middle one, because we dropped his nap so early because it didn't fit in our schedule for kindergarten, for my kindergartner. Um, he was a little wild child and he had a temper and he was always angry. And I remember thinking he was just like, okay, he's just bad, But now that I see, like, I could see when a kid's overly tired now. Like, okay, this kid didn't get a nap. He is definitely wanting a nap. Like, he's not evil. It's just he's freaking tired, And I feel bad. And I feel bad because I'm like, my kid was overly tired and I was just making him stay up. I didn't know how many naps he needed or.
It's the
It's
same as us. Look how we, as adults, how we are if we go off of no sleep or like just pushing it to the limit. We aren't very nice
Oh,
either.
you become delirious.
Right?
yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so Marianne, let's finish this with the quote.
Well, before I go to a quote, like for all those moms who are super tired or your kid just does not sleep, like we have all been there at one point in time. And I personally remember like when I would be awake all night long, I would like remind myself like this isn't gonna last very long. Like in a couple years, you're gonna miss being able to hold them and that feeling of them needing you. And like I'm sure we have all experienced that. And it's like just one more day or one more night or whatever. But like we've all been there where you have been, and I know it's exhausting and you can do it. So just hang on. But I do have a quote, and it says, anonymous, I know it's hard, Mama. I know it can be hard to get up every day and have these little people rely on you. I know it's hard to feel like sometimes your world is so small. I want to remind you, you are the world. You are the world that those little ones revolve around. You are their nurture, their home, and their comfort. You are everything to them. And I hope even on your hard days, you know how special you are, especially to your little people.
We love you, little people.
That makes me feel awful for letting them cry it out.
Oh, God. We all tried it.
Yeah. Mic drop. That was a good quote.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you want to catch up on our previous episodes, visit mamasmimosas.com, where you'll get access to all of our podcast show notes, our YouTube videos, and our private Facebook group, where we chat with you about each episode topic and host live question and answers with our favorite mom tribe. Can't wait to see you there.